the healthier you are. That's why you saw a lot of obese people with diabetes, pre-existing conditions, stuff like that, had a harder time because their immune response might not have been top shelf like it would be if they were in a healthier state, correct?
That's right. No, the healthier people tend to do well, which is not to say all of them. Some apparently healthy people will die, but apparently is the key word, right? They have something with them that we don't know about. They must have a mutation somewhere in some critical immune gene that we haven't picked up. And that's what gets them. Yes.
Right. And so with that, how come, and I know, I mean, you might have an opinion on this, but not like any data to back this up, because there really is none. Why wasn't that talked about a lot versus it was always like, listen, just get vaccinated, wear a mask, versus go outside, make sure you have vitamin D, take some good, B12, exercise, take better care of yourself, because that, especially if we know that how your body responds is going to determine on how bad this virus affects you, wouldn't that make sense to push that agenda as well?
I think, yes, I would agree. And so, for example, I take vitamin D because, especially in the winter, I don't get out. I don't get much sunlight, which sunlight is great to generate vitamin D. But if you can't, you take it. And vitamin D has a lot of different effects. And then one of them is it helps you make a robust immune response, right? So a long time ago, a doctor told me you should take vitamin D just for that. And I agree. And if, as long as you don't take too much, it's no problem. And yeah, have a healthy life, exercise and so forth. I think depending on who you listen to, that was part of the agenda. But the point is, it can't be the only approach, because that alone is not going to be enough, because you can have great habits, exercise, eat well, get a lot of sleep, take vitamin D. But if you have a mutation in some gene that affects your immune response that you don't know about, and many of us do, then that could be lethal when you get infected, despite everything else. Everything else you've done will be overridden by that. So that's why it's important to do everything you can, including that, but also vaccinating and masking, because the healthy lifestyle itself will not save you.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of what I was getting at, is like, I didn't see any of the big players that were really, at the time, like, for example, Fauci, like, was the voice of this whole thing. And, not once did I ever really hear him talk about that side. It was more like masks and vaccinations and stuff like that. Versus like, he may or may not have brought it up, but it wasn't like a kind of staple. And I agree. I think if you need to do everything you can, not just one thing. Like, for example, Rogan, he just had COVID, Joe Rogan. Now, he made a video and he was like, oh, I had, was it the ivermectin, hydrochloroquine? I had IVs, drips, and also, and I'm like, bro, first of all, you're a millionaire. You have the ability to have those things. Doctors come to your house and take care of you. Not everybody has that. So that's ridiculous, for one. But, he's obviously extremely healthy. He's 50 plus years old. He's in great shape. But he was kind of trying to push, like, listen, like, I took all these drugs that are never talked about, and that's when everybody was saying he was taking horse tranquilizers and stuff like that. But he's probably the only one that I listen to, that I hear in mainstream, that would push a healthy lifestyle. And he's like, listen, the vaccine, get a vaccine, yes. Wear masks, yes, but also do this. So that's why I was always kind of confused. Like, why wouldn't Fauci kind of like push everything, not just the vaccines or the masks, and then of course he got caught up in a couple things, telling people to double mask. And at one point he said, if you get vaccinated, you won't have to wear a mask anymore. And then that changed. So do you think like the white lie, almost like, hey, I almost have to lie to people to protect them? Do you think that kind of played an effect?
I think it's all about messaging, right? Right. So when you're dealing with hundreds of millions of people, you have to deliver a message that's going to reach as many of them as possible. And so they have, it's NIH and CDC in the US have to decide what message they're going to give. And in a pandemic, it can change pretty quickly. So back in May, when numbers were going down and they said, okay, vaccinated people can take off their masks, I thought that was a mistake, because there's still enough unvaccinated people to spur an outbreak. And in fact, that's what happened. Then in the summer, the cases shot up and then they changed their mind, which I think was bad messaging. I think they should have not changed it back in May. But more importantly, the healthy lifestyle messaging, I think and I don't know what they're thinking. I'm just guessing. I think they're worried that people will get that and say, oh, this is all I have to do. I don't have to get vaccinated. I don't have to wear a mask. All I need to do is live well and take care of myself. So I think they wanted to avoid that, perhaps. Now, I know that Fauci at one point was asked if he took vitamin D, and he said, yes, I do. So maybe that's one of the things that we have learned, that maybe early on you do a whole package of things. Here's what you have to do besides sleeping well and eating well and all of that. You have to wear a mask and get vaccinated, because that will give you the complete protection, right?
Right.
And so I think I agree that there have been messaging issues throughout this. It's not easy because most of the people around have never lived through a pandemic like 1918, right? So they have no lessons. Now we've learned a lot, and hopefully that will remain, but maybe we're not going to have another severe one for another 100 years. Who knows, right? I mean, this is not as severe as 1918 for sure. So I'm just hoping we learn lessons from this and that they remain, because there are a lot of lessons and a lot of things that could have been done but weren't. I'm hoping we're learning about that.